my guest this evening is Dr. Allan Hunter. He has spent his life exploring the intersection of literature, ancient wisdom, and the ways of the heart. He is a full professor of literature at Curry College, a counselor, and his doctorate degree in literature is from Oxford University. British by birth, he traveled extensively in Europe, India, Africa before settling in Boston, Massachusetts. He is the author of 12 books, including The Path of Synchronicity and Spiritual Hunger, both of which examine the concept of fate in our culture and the way we make meaning of our lives. His most recent book, Gratitude and Beyond, 5 Insights for a Fulfilled Life, looks at moments of change in our lives and how gratitude can lead us to deeper understanding about what it is. Dr. Allan Hunter, hi.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be talking to you this evening.
Oh, I am so looking for, everybody, Dr. Allan Hunter was with us in last August, and it was a fine interview, and I was so looking forward to hearing your voice, and there you are.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
Well, it's a real pleasure to be here.
You're lovely. You're just such an authentic soul, and you're a professor of literature and all that other stuff, and a great author. And I wanted to ask you if you could tell everybody who you are, your background.
Yes. Well, you just gave me rather a nice introduction, but what I am, I think, is best explained by the fact that I am an explorer of spiritual traditions and where they intersect with literature and everyday life. So that would perhaps be the way to describe me. I came from England many years ago. I came from an academic background, which at the time seemed to me to be completely divorced from spiritual life. And I couldn't quite work out why all this wonderful literature, which people had written and enjoyed and loved for many years, was being analyzed in a very bloodless sort of cold way, which took all of the real power out of it. So my aim has always been to reconnect the power of the heart, if you like, with the power of ancient wisdom as reflected in literature. And when I came to gratitude as a topic, I realized that in fact this was one of the cores to living an authentic life.
And I must say, I think because you probably saw my post on Facebook. I was in Puerto Vallarta last week, and I brought my book that you sent to me. Thank you very much, on Gratitude and Beyond, and I highlight everything. I'm just a highlighter. I love highlighting, and it's so well written, and it's so raw and real. Not raw in a bad form, but raw and real about things. And I really like what you say. We don't have to go through it. Wait. I want to go this way. Why did you, I want to focus on Gratitude and Beyond now. Why is it, what happened, your experience? Wasn't there an experience that you had?
Yes, well, I start the book with that. When I was living in England many years ago, nearly 30 years ago now, I had an experience of what you might call a professional disaster. I was trying to be somebody I couldn't be because of ego, basically. I was trying hard to be everything to everyone in my job, working with disturbed kids who were very difficult, in my personal life with my then fiancée, with my family, my birth family. I was trying to be somebody who mattered to them. And what I had forgotten to do was to look inside, because I was so busy trying to be the person I thought I ought to be. Well, my professional disaster was I became ill. I became so ill that I lost my job, basically, or I had to give up my job. And that meant giving up my house, because the house came with the job, and really any possibility of a meaningful way forward. I was very sick indeed, and fortunately I met the people who saved my life, who were acupuncturists. And this was 30 years ago, when acupuncture, especially in Britain, was still very much a sort of voodoo art. But I came to them almost in desperation. I was turning blue at the lips. I couldn't breathe. And they took me in very gently and put me right, and my health has been marvelous ever since. But what this has to do with gratitude is that looking back at that time, I thought, oh, that was a disaster. That was the end of my hopes in a certain direction. But 20 years later, as I began to look back and say, what actually happened during that time? What changed for me? And what changed for me was literally everything. And so you might say sometimes when you reach your rock bottom, in my case, your real rock bottom, where I was very close to being dead. That's what they said afterwards. They said, they said in their wonderful way, they said, we only had one person who was worse off than you, and he lived too. They didn't tell me that at the time. They told me that several weeks later when I was recovering. And then I realized, something had just given me a real slap on the side of the head. And it took me a long time before I realized that I had just been pushed in a whole new direction in thinking about just about every part of my life. Now, I could have looked back at that time and said, if I hadn't got ill, I would still be in England, I would still be an academic, I would still be, writing learned articles for learned journals. And that would be one way to miss the entire point. And the entire point for me, and I think for many other people who have been at extremes in their lives, is that sometimes it's only by going to the extreme that we get the lesson that we need. And for that lesson, we should be very, very grateful. And so I started looking at gratitude and saying, well, what actually happens when we're grateful? And that's when the book came to me. It came to me and it sort of bit my ankles, as it were, and wouldn't let go until I'd written it. Because what unfolds in the course of the book is a whole series of stages that we move through if we are truly in touch with gratitude. So, that was the event of my life, but it didn't have immediate effect because, like all of us, we defend against our lessons until a little later, and then some 20 years later, I said, "Oh, I get it now. Oh, now I know where it was leading
aha
me."
Moment, or I should have had a V8 juice. They used to have those commercials, and it's like a light comes on. In your book here, and everybody out there listening, this book is really, really is wonderfully written. Gratitude and Beyond. 5 Insights for a Fulfilled Life. And there's one thing I read. It's on chapter 6, and you said. A quote, because this is your writing, I'm not taking it. He says, and I love this, we can learn everything that is worth learning by going to the edge of hell and making it back in one piece, as Dante did. Sometimes it's the only way to learn. Yeah. Well, that's so true. But you also say, we don't need to have to go through that in order to get these great lessons, correct?
Yeah. That's absolutely correct. As I sometimes say, there are no hard lessons, there are just hard ways of learning them. You can choose to learn them the easy way by being aware that the lessons are out there, or you can choose to learn them the way I did, which is the very hard way. And that was one of the reasons I wrote the book. I said, gosh, we don't all have to fall into the pit in order to learn this lesson. If we know the pit is there, if we know what is likely to happen, we can perhaps look and say, this is just the pit that I'm falling into. This is just the edge of hell that I am touching. And I can learn from this. Because you see, a lot of people in my counseling work, a lot of people feel that when they're in a bad space, they feel it's never going to end. And that's a devastating feeling. It's, I'm in a bad space and it's going to be this way forever. But the truth of the matter is that everything changes. And sometimes when we hit bottom, that's the time when we can find, our bedrock. I think J.K. Rowling said that about her own life. The Harry Potter author has some wonderful wisdom to offer. She said when she was at her lowest point, she discovered, oh, this is it. Okay, I can build on this. And that's a marvelous place to start again.
Well, I one of my favorite well, it's not one of my favorite things to have gone through, but is Dark Night of the Soul.
Yes, yes.
and you talk about in your book the ego and all that, and it's pretty, and that's what you're just saying. You feel like it's a very bad place to be, and like nothing will ever get. But you have to go through all that, and the ego does play a part in that.
Yes, it does.
It's a funny little thing, that ego.
It's a funny big thing.
You talk about that also in this. The ego, it plays part. Of course, we all have it, but we can actually tame it. Something false ego, release from false ego. But I wanted to ask you, because you did send me something that I thought was really great, because you'd mentioned that there are some people that may dislike the idea of gratitude because it sounds soft.
Yeah.
Slightly less reasonable. So I wanted to ask you if you could draw the distinction between real gratitude and that bogus gratitude.
Yes. Many people think gratitude is a soft option because, you say thank you to the person who hands you your groceries, and you say thank you to the person who holds the door open to you, and it's just a sort of social ritual. And that's one form of gratitude, and I think it's worthy of upholding those social rituals, but it's also much more important to stay in touch with the meaning behind those social rituals. Because when you say thank you to someone, when you really say it with meaning, you are putting yourself slightly lower than they are. You are less important because you're thanking them. They've done something for you. And when you do that, you immediately begin to reduce the ego. And so the 5 insights in the book are really 5 stages during which we reduce that ego self-importance that keeps us from feeling the profound nature of gratitude, which lurks behind the words. And when we move into that space of real gratitude, then something changes, and we can be profoundly gratitude for, well, as I said earlier, the disasters in our lives. Because we learn from disasters. We don't learn when we do something successful. We go, oh, okay, that was great. Ha, marvelous. But when something causes us to think again, we go, oh, that doesn't work. That's when we learn, that's when we grow. And that's when we have to mobilize a different kind of gratitude. Some people call that radical gratitude. Now, the examples I've come across in my life and in my work and in my reading of radical gratitude have been powerful and extreme. And sometimes people have been able to look at those terrible periods of their lives and said, that made me recognize important things about myself. That made me able to see how strong I am. That made me able to see that I can offer more. Do you see? Andrei Biankowski is one of the people who uses that phrase. And he was, as a little boy, he was shipped off to Serbia by the Russians, who took his family and said, you're undesirable at the start of the Second World War, and sent them all off to Serbia. And he watched his grandfather take the decision to stop eating so the little boys could eat. And so he watched his grandfather as they sat in a railway carriage, a railway truck actually, for 2 weeks traveling to Siberia. He watched his grandfather die of starvation so that he, this little boy, could eat. Now he said, you have 2 reactions there. You can either hate the Russians forever for what they did, or you can look at it and say, with profound gratitude, my grandfather loved me so much that he was prepared to give up his life, which was already over for him, so that the next generation could flourish. And when we see it that way, it becomes totally life-inspiring, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's very heartfelt, that story too. It gave me, well, I like having a little bit of cold on me, but yeah, it gave me, yeah, that's, no, that's definitely it, because you said something interesting. His grandfather had already lived his life, or,
Mm,
his age or whatever. So so he could help them. Oh, that's lovely. How sad, but a negative into a
okay.
positive, and that is authentic gratitude. If
That is
you,
authentic gratitude, yes. And
yeah,
yeah, and I mean they're in between sort of bogus everyday um, attitude of gratitude and this profound gratitude. There's perhaps something in the middle, which is realistic gratitude as well. And I think realistic gratitude is what most of us do every day, but we don't give ourselves credit for that. And that is, we say, um, actually, I'm doing the best I can in a difficult circumstance today, and I should be
yes,
grateful for that. And I could choose to be proud of the fact that I'm doing a difficult job as well as can be expected. And when we do that, we stop being victims.
right. I get that. That's really a great thing. Everybody listening, I can say I mean, I'm real open about my stuff, and I know when I get into a place in this, it'd be much better to say, I have gratitude, even though I'm doing the best I can, instead of saying I'm a loser or I'm not doing, that. That's not good.
No, no, because the loser attitude is, of course, throwing away the lesson. It's saying there is
And
no
being a
lesson, I
victim.
can't, there's nothing
Yeah.
to be gained.
There's
And
nothing
lots
to
of
be, no
people,
good will come from it.
yeah, yeah, and unfortunately, lots of people fall into that and stay in that. Gratitude is the way out.
Yeah. Uh, you talked about, you mentioned looking into the pinnacle of the process that pulls us back
Yeah,
to who we authentically are, living an authentic life, perhaps. But we can't get there without gratitude. That
yes.
really is the primary. What do you call it in a car? The chassis? No, the what is it called? The main frame of a car. What do you call it?
Chassis, yes.
Chassis. It's a chassis. There.
I
Thank you.
think I think it's a starting point because, well, if you like, I can go through the
Yes.
5 points very quickly.
Yes.
Would you like that?
Yeah, I would love that.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Well, as I said, I think the starting point for a meaningful life is to be in the space of gratitude, especially when something has gone wrong and we can say, oh, I got a lesson there that I needed to have. Because when we get into that space of gratitude, the next thing we feel is humility. And that's not humiliation. Humiliation is when you feel that everybody is picking on you. But humility is when we step back from the I'm so important and I should win at everything to the okay, it's not just me on the universe. There are lots of other people. And that reduces that sense of ego importance that we tend to wrap up in being successful, in having the shiny toys, in having praise, adulation, and the goodwill of all those people who want us to fulfill a role. So we go from gratitude to this real sense of being perhaps humble, I think is the way to see it. And when you get to that, something really marvelous happens. Because that's the second point on this pentacle, which is, as you probably know, is a 5-pointed star which can be drawn without lifting the pencil from the paper. So all of these points are sort of interlinked in this way. And when we go from humility, we begin to see, I think, how beautiful the world is around us. Now, talk to anybody who's just walked away from a car wreck. The first thing they do is they feel gratitude. Whoa, I'm still alive. The second thing they do is they say, well, I'm lucky to be alive. And the third thing they do is they look around and say, thank God I am alive. Look at how wonderful this world is. Look at how beautiful it is. Even a blade of grass is marvelous if you've just nearly faced extinction. In fact, many years ago, I worked with a gentleman who had been incarcerated for 20 years, and he escaped, and he was recaptured. But he said, when I got out, he said, I just couldn't believe how beautiful the world was. I would spend hours looking at roadside weeds because they were so beautiful. Can you imagine that?
Yeah,
Well,
no,
I can.
the simple things that we take for granted, in somebody that
Exactly.
isn't, especially incarcerated. I,
Yes.
I could imagine it if I had. Well, sometimes I try to do that when I'm having my poor me day. I try.
Oh,
I
you have them
really do.
too. Oh, I
You know
do.
what I mean? I go out and look at things like, a sunset, or shoot, where I live is just lovely, and I
Hmm.
don't sometimes even go out to be in the loveliness.
Hmm. Yes, well,
And
we don't, do we? We get trapped in our world of deadlines
exactly.
and things that we think are important, and we forget to look at the sky and look at the birds, or just look around us, look
Oh,
around at the people. I
that's
mean,
right. Or
people are
look at the
beautiful.
weeds. I mean, the weeds again. I can understand that if somebody, everything can be lovely, and it's almost like again it all goes into this ego stuff of ours.
Yes, yes,
It really does.
exactly.
Don't I mean? Isn't that what that's really? It's gosh, that ego. Whoever created who built that into us, whatever. But it does. It can. Oh, well,
Yeah,
I'm sorry to
I
interrupt
agree.
you. So
Absolutely, I totally agree. I mean, we need egos, otherwise we wouldn't know which clothes to put on in the morning.
exactly.
But we tend to get a little out of control when we start worrying about exactly how we're going to look in the morning, because we have to impress people rather than perhaps about being comfortable or whatever. So, I'm right with you on that, and I think that when we've reestablished that sense of beauty, we can see other people differently. We see other people, even people who aren't conventionally beautiful, we see them as beautiful souls. And that's the third step, because the next thing it's going to take us to is when we're in that space of seeing the beauty of nature and other people, we're actually recovering the essential purity and innocence that exists within ourselves. And that is a vital, vital thing to recover. Most people, most of the time and most of the day, are so involved in the daily activities that we forget to come back to what is authentically me that gives me joy. And that's what I call the fourth corner of this pentacle, this five-pointed star, is innocence. And when we're in that space of innocence, we know exactly who we are and what we love and what we care for and what we don't love. And that leads us inevitably towards the fifth point of this five-pointed star, which is we totally reevaluate our place in the natural world. Instead of saying, what am I here to get? We say, what am I here to give and to feel and to experience? And of course the answer to that is always the same. The answer is always love.
Yes, it is. It always does come down to love.
Yes.
I mean, so true, and it's such a word to me. I've always felt that was thrown about so recklessly too.
Mm. Well, that's why I in the book I draw this strange five-pointed star, because I think every time we go from one stage to another, we deepen our sense of what love is until it becomes something, perhaps, if we're fortunate and if we're paying attention, it becomes something close to what I would call unconditional love, which is we love other people because to do anything else is absolutely absurd. Whether they love us back is not the point.
Exactly.
We love them because any other attitude is ridiculous. It's just unthinkable. And that's what gratitude can lead us to through these 5 steps. But it can't lead us there unless we're aware of those 5 steps. Otherwise, we just say, thank you to the person who holds the door for us, and thank you to the person who stopped his car so we can move ours into the correct lane. We have to be more aware that gratitude has many levels and be willing to pursue it into its richness and its wonderful depth.
Can we hear everybody okay? I hope I can.
Oh, can you not hear me?
I can hear you. It was fine. I might have just been on my end. Allan, I love, you're right, because this almost comes back to that we're linked to others. We're collective.
Yeah.
I love Carl Jung about, collectively we are connected. So isn't that the fifth would be the fifth awareness of our place in nature?
Oh, you put it beautifully. Yes. Because actually, we're all linked. We all share DNA. We share the earth. And if we pollute our little bit of the earth, actually we pollute it for everybody and ourselves. If we throw away toxic waste in a place, it comes back to haunt some of us at some point. So yes, we're all linked in the Jungian sense. We are part of a collective awareness that goes far beyond us. And when I die, the chemicals that make up my body don't disappear; they get recycled into something else. So we are all linked in this profound chemical, rather odd way. We're all part of the same thing.
When you mentioned that, because what you went through was, like I guess, for lack of a better word, near-death experience. Well, close to death, very close.
It was.
So, because like I said, I was reading your book in Puerto Vallarta, and I was passing it around to 14 other people there, and they asked me what I was reading, and I said, so I was allowing them to be grateful for me bringing this book in gratitude, because
I love it. Thank you.
No, don't thank me. Thank yourself, because you wrote it. But because it is not the soft. There's that soft idea between gratitude sounds soft. It's easy to say, oh, I'm grateful. You can say it a million times, but it's something about, you said, it's almost like a question. You said, if I've been given a gift, the gift of life, how can I give back? I think it's just lovely.
Thank you.
And that,
yeah.
And so that's where it brings you to. Except again, we don't need to go to a place of or it literally in a real, not just, we could go to that place in our mind and take ourselves into a place. I think Wayne Dyer talked about this one time. Why should we have to go through that very hard experience, and instead go through it in your own mind? And, if you can, and visualize something very, I liked how he put it, because, people are good for visualization, and just reflect on what about that, if that, and just almost like let it happen, but, not really, that we can all grasp hold of the thing, right?
Well, yes, we as I said a little earlier, we have these things called egos, and we need them to help us decide who we are. Am I a person who likes math, or am I a person who likes science? Am I a person who wants to wear these clothes or wants to wear those clothes? Do I want to eat vegetables, or do I want to eat fish? So we need ego development to let us know who we authentically are. But the trouble is that people won't leave us alone to make our own decisions when we're little kids. So we go off to school and they tell us, oh, you just aren't really, you don't rate unless you're on the baseball team. Unless you're a cheerleader, you just really, you got the wrong sneakers. And that hijacks the sense of the ego and takes it in a very, very dangerous direction. And I think that gratitude And the near-death experience is one of the things that can shake us out of that illusion, or delusion, if you like. It's perhaps one of the only things that can do. Because here we are in the United States. There are so many wonderful toys. There are so many shiny objects we can covet. There's so much money that we think we ought to have. There's so much fame that we think we need because we see other people on the TV basking in it. And actually that takes us away from knowing who we truly are. So gratitude, I think, is terribly, terribly important and sometimes very difficult because it insists on asking you, who are you? Who do you really think you are? And how can you give back? Because you're not here to take. You're here to give. We think, some of us, oh, we're here to make a lot of money and have a nice house, and those are great things. But how can you also give back? That's where the interlinked business of being a human comes into its full glory, you might say. How can we contribute?
And yet comes back to the same thing, love.
Yes. Yes.
And, we're going to take a short break from our sponsor and a commercial break, and we'll be back in 1 minute so I can continue on with this conversation. So we'll be right back, everyone, with Dr. Allan Hunter.
A new era in psychic services has begun. PsychicAccess.com. You can connect with our psychic advisors by telephone or chat 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All of our psychic advisors are interviewed, fully verified, and accuracy tested, assuring you quality service. We're living in some very troubled times right now. More and more, the world's problems are affecting us on a personal level. You don't have to deal with this alone. Our highly accurate psychics, caring advisors, and talented mediums can help with situations you are currently experiencing and can let you know what the future may hold for you. All new customers get a free 6-minute reading. All you have to do is register. Why not visit us now and get a free reading at PsychicAccess.com.
And we are back with Dr. Allan Hunter and on Gratitude and Beyond. It's actually a book that he wrote, and I have, and I read it. And he's also the author of The Path of Synchronicity, which again would be another. All your books are fantastic. Okay, so Allan, let's see. What else? You talk about. In this book of yours, you talk about some scenarios of certain people, or I always like to ask you this though. Gratitude, the challenge to ego, gratitude. Yeah, gratitude. Is that too intense to maybe give an overview about that, or?
Well, gratitude really is the primary challenge to the ego, which, as I said a little while ago, is the thing that can lead us so badly astray. It can lead us into false friendships. It can lead us into the placing of worldly goods at a way too high a rate, and trying to find meaning in all those things. Sometimes, well, what one discovers is that those people who have a lot of worldly wealth often complain that their lives don't have enough real meaning and real connection. So, for the process of gratitude, I have the positive pentacle, but I also have the negative pentacle, because we have a choice when we have a near-death experience of being either very grateful that we're alive or of going into a different space. And a lot of people choose a different space. So imagine this scenario. Somebody has just walked away from a terrible car wreck. One person goes, "Wow, it's great to be alive. I must be alive for a reason. Maybe I should pay more attention to that." That's the gratitude aspect. And that's the person who's going to ask, "Oh, I'm alive. I must be here for a reason. What is the reason?" Some people would walk away from a car wreck and they'd say, "It wasn't my fault."
Yeah.
That wasn't my fault. And that's when they step into selfishness and self-justification. And then following that comes pride. You know, it wasn't my fault. I was driving perfectly well. I'm a really good driver. I've always been a good driver.
Right. Or I'm so good that, I came out alive or something like that.
I came out alive. It must have been miraculous the way I drove through that. And that's when people start finding the ugliness in life, because they say, it was that other guy. He was the idiot here. He was the person who nearly killed me. Mm-hmm. And that's when you look for the ugliness. Mistakes happen. The person probably wasn't deliberately trying to kill anyone. But if you are looking for ugliness, it's really easy to find it. Do you see how this is the exact dark mirror opposite of the first pentacle?
Yes,
it is exactly
absolutely.
The same. And when you're looking at ugliness, the driver who's walked away from the wreck says, "Well, I'm going to sue him. I'm going to take him through the courts.
Yeah,
he's a liar." And you get from ugliness to suspicion. And then living a life of suspicion is a terrifying place to be, because literally one does not trust anyone. And one obsesses about the car crash and who's going to pay and how right you are and how wrong the other person was. And guess what? That leads you into a place where you are totally separate from other human beings, justifying how right we may be under these circumstances. Now, that's the pentacle of disaster for me, and it's the pentacle of fear. It's the pentacle of fear. Whereas the other pentacle is the pentacle of love, which takes you back to the point of saying, what am I here to do in this world? What is this reminder sent to tell me? And that's the difference between being a victim and shaking off the experience in its negative aspect and saying, okay, this is a reminder. I am here to do something more than worry about me. So this is really why I wrote the book, because it seemed to me this is so perfect as a way of looking at what happens when we come up against difficulties in our lives. The pentacle is a very ancient symbol. It dates back, well, who knows how far, and in the Middle Ages, the medieval period, it was always seen in its upward form with the spike at the top. It was seen as a positive image, but when it was inverted, it became devilish with two points at the top. And I think this is exactly what we're looking at, and what we're looking at is the opportunity to turn an experience into something profoundly positive or something profoundly negative. So this is why I chose the ancient symbol of the pentacle, because for some reason it seemed to fit rather spookily perfectly.
I agree with that pentacle, using that pentacle, and plus it's very easy to understand the way people. You need to go get this book, listening out there. Because I do like the way you did, and right in the center, it's love.
It's love.
It's love and compassion. That's what love brings. I mean, unconditional love and allowing and generosity. I think it's lovely how you did that pentacle. In fact, it was genius.
Well, as I sometimes say, these things come to me. I don't know where they come from. All my books come along and they...
Because you're a genius. No, because you are one of the most authentic beings I've ever known.
Oh my!
One of the most. No, and don't say thank you because it's you. Thank yourself. But it is, and it's like you. I really feel that you can decide to you want to be your authentic self, but you also want to live an authentic life.
Yeah.
And that has a lot to do with how you're going to approach things, like what you're talking about in the book. But also, okay, you can have a sense of humor about things. That's very important. Yes.
Very important.
I know you mentioned that, but I'm all for that. Even when things are rough, it's like, my goodness, just laugh. Humor it will bring you back to yourself. It absolutely does. And I don't know. Yeah. I am, and being humble. It's not, and not being humiliated, but a sense of being humble is. It takes a lot of openness and being authentic to be humble.
Yes, I think so, and I think humor is not to be discounted, because if you can see the humor in anything, it usually means that you're not taking yourself so seriously. And that's a great virtue in staying
Exactly.
open to what is, as opposed to what you think it ought to be, or what we think it ought to be. So humor, the ability to laugh at oneself, and perhaps laugh gently with and at others and the absurdity, that's a great reducer of the ego, a great reducer of anger, which only comes from a wounded part of the ego that says, I don't know how to deal with this. So yeah, the sense of humor and the sense of being humble, not being the center of everything, my goodness, what marvelous lessons there are to be learned there.
And then, although there might be some people that aren't up for it yet, or up for seeing, like you talking about the person in the car crash, I was thinking, oh yeah, it wasn't my fault, and sue. You're right about that, but we can pray for those people.
Well,
that they'll
yes.
find a way. But
Yes.
but like you said, it took you 20 years until you reflected. Even though I feel you're unauthentic anyway, it took you. You said 20 years to reflect back on how much gratitude and how you did it all, the pinnacle of gratitude, beauty, and then the other part of the fear, pride and suspicion and ugliness. It took you that long. Oh, I'm not going to say that long. It took you to that time frame
Yes.
to grasp hold of it. It must have been pretty intense for you, or pretty cool intense.
Well, yeah, it was. It was intense, because sometimes it's only when you've been doing something for a while that you step back and say, well, what is it that I've actually been doing here? And is there a form to it? And what we discovered, or what I discovered, is that there is a form to this. And knowing the form can help you get deeper more quickly. So imagine any type of, ceremonial, any type of ritual that somebody does. The business of ritual is to take you through a series of steps so that you can be aware of them and get as deep as possible into the meaning of what's happening in front of you. And what I came up with is that, yes, gratitude has a series of steps that we need to, as it were, mark and think about and say, yes, I'm going deeper now, and it has meaning, and this is a way to remember it. So perhaps there's only one big lesson that we're here on Earth to learn. I can't think of a bigger lesson than learning to love.
The courage to
really,
love, too, huh?
Really love people. Not just the people who are nice to look at, not just the people who are nice to us, but learning to love no matter what. I don't think there's a bigger lesson. It echoes through all of literature for 3,000 years in the Western world. And I think gratitude is the key to that.
Yeah, and I do think that makes a big difference. It will, getting the message out and people understanding what you wrote about. It's there was one thing you said, and I really love it, because it's like that place is one of courage and love. Courage to love, and courage is a big thing. I feel the word courage, be brave, and open yourself up to humble and humility, and even beauty. People that don't feel that they even are deserving of innocence, or focusing on that, or what we're here for. There's a lot of things like that, and everybody is loved. And I'm not trying to preach that, like, I'm on a whatever the guys are called when they're preaching on stage. But, Allan, I wanted to ask you, because, you are literature. When you were here last time on the Synchronicity, I asked about synchronicity in literature. Is there any literature, that you look at as far as what what you wrote this book in the gratitude, and it's not just and beyond, because it is beyond. It's not just about gratitude. Is there any literature that you can refer back to, or that you see this also being the message?
Gratitude or synchronicity or both. I mean,
yeah. I mean, I know.
It exists everywhere in literature. Everywhere.
Yeah.
Every story that has survived in the Western canon, from Homer onwards, and Homer was 500 years BC. Every single one of those stories is based on the fact that things happen for a reason, that the plot hinges on a series of occasions in which the main character is invited to learn certain lessons. And so, not many of us have read Homer's Odyssey, but one of the things that Odysseus, who is, you could say, the model for all other heroes ever since, one of the things he has to learn is actually to be grateful and to start treating people better. Because the story opens for him, and the actual start of the story shows his kingdom in disarray, and then we cut to him, and he's just been shipwrecked. He's naked, he's got no friends, all his sailors have drowned, and his ship has sunk, and what does he do? He is at his near-death experience. He's on a foreign shore. Anyone could come along and enslave him or kill him, which was what would have happened in Greece at the time. Instead of which, a sympathetic person comes along, a woman called Nausicaa, who is a beautiful maiden, and normally Odysseus would do his very best to try and seduce such a young woman. Instead of which, he treats her for the first time in his life. He starts treating a woman with respect. And he disguises who he is for a while because he's ashamed that he has no clothes, that he's shipwrecked. And eventually he admits to who he is and the dangers he's passed. And this is the moment, it's a magic moment in the story, because this is the moment when he says, "This is who I am, and I need help."
That's humble. That's humility.
Powerful. Yeah. Here is a man who has never asked for help from anyone.
Yeah.
And I say that because there are so many people I treat in my counseling practice, so many of my students that I talk with at Curry College, and they rarely get the courage to say, "This is who I am, and I'm going to need some help." I mean, it takes huge courage. Remember, courage comes from the word corps, French cœur, meaning from the heart, It takes huge courage to say, "Help me." Not
right.
"Help me," passiveness.
No, you're right. In fact, I said this before when you were on last time. Your students must just... You really probably impact your students for, many years and years, 20 years, 30 years down the line. You'll be one that I'm sure will, you'll be that one that they remember. Because
I can only say I'm very fortunate in my students. I learn so much from them, and they are such extraordinary human beings, many of them. So, it's a powerful thing that happens in the classroom.
Yeah, and it's a powerful thing that you are, because your academia. I always been saying that. I don't know if that's a word, but academia is one of the a professor of literature. You're not the professor of paranormal. You're not the professor of psychic stuff, but you have such an influence on something that goes into the literature and everything else. Your students are getting, I feel, just from where I'm sitting, a much better sense of what life is all about, really, even though it's a literature and stuff, because you offer even more.
Well, I hope so. For me, literature has always been about life.
Yeah.
People write stories because they say, "I know something about life, and I don't quite know how else to convey it apart from telling a story."
Yeah.
And if the story is any good, it survives, and if it's not, it tends to disappear. And so literature for me has always been about spiritual growth. And that's what I try to bring to my students.
Well, I
And at the
don't think you
core of-
try. I think you do, Al. I think you do it. Al, we only have like a minute left, and I would like you to let everybody know where you're. Also on the guest page, we have all the contact information. But if you could let everybody know where they could find you or read. You have a great. By the way, I was over there. I love. I read. I don't know if you saw the comment I left.
Yes, I did.
You read. Very nice read. Short read. It's like, what do you call it? It's not really a blog. It's like a blog, but they're short. It was really touching, and I never thought about that. So, if you could give everybody, your website and where they can find, they can read these great things.
My website is allanhunter.net, and that's ALLAN hunter.net. And there are extracts and so on of all my 12 books there. You can click the links to go to either Amazon or the various presses. Fintorn Press has printed many of mine. And you can read the opening chapters there, so allanhunter.net. That's the easiest way to find me. Or you can just go to Amazon, Allan G. Hunter, and Gratitude and Beyond, and that will click on the author page, and you'll see all of my books there arrayed in all their glory. So that's the easiest way to get hold of me.
Right, and everybody out there also on Alan's guest page, we also have all the books there as well that you can click on and check out Amazon. And all, Alan, thank you so much for joining me and all of us tonight. I really appreciate you, and I adore you. I just adore who you are.
You do such a good job in conveying important messages out into the world. Thank you.
Oh, no, Alan, thank you. And have a fantastic night. I hope it's lovely there and where you are in the East Coast, Massachusetts.
It's a cloudy night, but it's beautiful.
It's full moon tonight too. Our honeymoon is what our executive producer said. So, Alan, bless your heart and thank you, and have a great evening and tomorrow and every day after that.
Thank you so much, Maureen. It's been such a pleasure to chat with you again. It's really a delight.
You too, Alan. Good night.
Good night.
Hello, my name is Res Miranda. If you're having relationship, career, or life issues, I'm inviting you to experience what it's like to have access to professional, highly accurate psychics and spiritual advisors you can trust to care and help you. Register now to get your free 6-minute reading by telephone or chat. Get answers. Get access. Psychic access. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. PsychicAccess.com.
Maybe
from an academic background, which at the time seemed to me to be completely divorced from spiritual life. And I couldn't quite work out why all this wonderful literature, which people had written and enjoyed and loved for many years, was being analyzed in a very bloodless sort of cold way, which took all of the real power out of it. So my aim has always been to reconnect the power of the heart, if you like, with the power of ancient wisdom as reflected in literature. And when I came to gratitude as a topic, I realized that in fact this was one of the cores to living an authentic life.
And I must say, I think because you probably saw my post on Facebook. I was in Puerto Vallarta last week, and I brought my book that you sent to me. Thank you very much, on Gratitude and Beyond, and I highlight everything. I'm just a highlighter. I love highlighting, and it's so well written, and it's so raw and real. Not raw in a bad form, but raw and real about things. And I really like what you say. We don't have to go through it. You know what? Wait. I want to go this way. Why did you... I want to focus on Gratitude and Beyond now. Why is it... What happened? Your experience. Wasn't there an experience that you had?
Yes. Well, I start the book with that. When I was living in England many years ago, nearly 30 years ago now, I had an experience of what you might call a professional disaster. I was trying to be somebody I couldn't be because of ego, basically. I was trying hard to be everything to everyone in my job, working. They said, well, they said in their wonderful way, they said, we only had one person who was worse off than you, and he lived too.
That's
they
nice.
didn't tell me that at the time. They told me that several weeks later when I was recovering. And then I realized, something had just given me a real slap on the side of the head. And it took me a long time before I realized that I had just been pushed in a whole new direction in thinking about just about every part of my life. Now, I could have looked back at that time and said, if I hadn't got ill, I would still be in England, I would still be an academic, I would still be, writing learned articles for learned journals. And that would be one way to miss the entire point. And the entire point for me, and I think for many other people who have been at extremes in their lives, is that sometimes it's only by going to the extreme that we get the lesson that we need. And for that lesson, we should be very, very grateful. And so I started looking at gratitude and saying, well, what actually happens when we're grateful? And that's when the book came to me. It came to me and it sort of bit my ankles, as it were, and wouldn't let go until I'd written it. Because what unfolds in the course of the book is a whole series of stages that we move through if we are truly in touch with gratitude. So, that was the event of my life, but it didn't have immediate effect because, like all of us, we defend against our lessons until a little later, and then some 20 years later, I said, I get it now. Now I know where it was leading
aha
me.
moment, or I should have had a V8 juice. They used to have those commercials, and it's like a light comes on. In your book here, and everybody out there listening, this book is really, really is wonderfully written. Gratitude and Beyond. 5 Insights for a Fulfilled Life. And there's one thing I read. It's on chapter 6, and you said. A quote, because this is your writing, I'm not taking it. He says, and I love this, we can learn everything that is worth learning by going to the edge of hell and making it back in one piece, as Dante did. Sometimes it's the only way to learn. Yeah. Well, that's so true. But you also say, we don't need to have to go through that in order to get these great lessons, correct?
Yeah. That's absolutely correct. As I sometimes say, there are no hard lessons, there are just hard ways of learning them. You can choose to learn them the easy way by being aware that the lessons are out there, or you can choose to learn them the way I did, which is the very hard way. And that was one of the reasons I wrote the book. I said, gosh, we don't all have to fall into the pit in order to learn this lesson. If we know the pit is there, if we know what is likely to happen, we can perhaps look and say, this is just the pit that I'm falling into. This is just the edge of hell that I am touching. And I can learn from this. Because you see, a lot of people in my counseling work, a lot of people feel that when they're in a bad space, they feel it's never going to end. And that's a devastating feeling. It's, I'm in a bad space and it's going to be this way forever. But the truth of the matter is that everything changes. And sometimes when we hit bottom, that's the time when we can find, our bedrock. I think J.K. Rowling said that about.
My guest this evening is Dr. Allan Hunter. He has spent his life exploring the intersection of literature, ancient wisdom, and the ways of the heart. He is a full professor of literature at Curry College, a counselor, and his doctorate degree in literature is from Oxford University. British by birth, he traveled extensively in Europe, India, Africa before settling in Boston, Massachusetts. He is the author of 12 books, including The Path of Synchronicity and Spiritual Hunger, both of which examine the concept of fate in our culture and the way we make meaning of our lives. His most recent book, Gratitude and Beyond, 5 Insights for a Fulfilled Life, looks at moments of change in our lives and how gratitude can lead us to deeper understanding about what it is. Dr. Allan Hunter, hi.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be talking to you this evening.
Oh, I am so looking for, everybody, Dr. Allan Hunter was with us last August, and it was a
Hmm.
fine interview, and I was so looking forward to hearing your voice, and there you are.
Oh, good.
Thank you.
Well,
You're,
it's a
you're,
real pleasure to be here.
you're lovely. You're just such an authentic soul, and you're a professor of literature and all that other stuff, and a great author. And I wanted to ask you if you could you tell everybody who you are, your background?
Yes. Well, you just gave me rather a nice introduction. But what I am, I think, is best explained by the fact that I am an explorer of spiritual traditions and where they intersect with literature and everyday life. So that would perhaps be the way to describe me. I came from England many years ago. I came from with disturbed kids who were very difficult in my personal life, with my then fiancée, with my family, my birth family. I was trying to be somebody who mattered to them. And what I had forgotten to do was to look inside, because I was so busy trying to be the person I thought I ought to be. Well, my professional disaster was I became ill. I became so ill that I lost my job, basically, or I had to give up my job. And that meant giving up my house, because the house came with the job, and really any possibility of a meaningful way forward. I was very sick indeed, and fortunately I met the people who saved my life, who were acupuncturists. And this was 30 years ago, when acupuncture, especially in Britain, was still very much a sort of voodoo art. But I came to them almost in desperation. I was turning blue at the lips. I couldn't breathe. And they took me in very gently and put me right, and my health has been marvelous ever since. But what this has to do with gratitude is that looking back at that time, I thought, oh, that was a disaster. That was the end of my hopes in a certain direction. But 20 years later, as I began to look back and say, what actually happened during that time? What changed for me? And what changed for me was literally everything. And so you might say sometimes when you reach your rock bottom, in my case, your real rock bottom, where I was very close to being dead, that's what they said afterwards.